welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be going over the pros and cons of housing reptiles in a plastic bin like this versus a glass terrarium like this. So the first thing I wanted to cover was the pros and cons of the plastic bin. So the first pro would be that they are very cost effective. You can get a plastic bin about the size of a 40-gallon tank for about $20 versus a glass terrarium that's going to be $300 to $350. So if you have a large collection or just money's a little tight, they're going to be a lot more cost effective. Second pro would be humidity. They are extremely easy to keep humidity in, and if it's too humid, it's as simple as drilling some holes in the side, and if it's too dry, you just throw some tape over those holes. So monitoring humidity and getting it to the ideal level is going to be much easier in a plastic bin. The third pro would be that they can be used with snake racks. So again, if you have large collections, it's a much more feasible way of housing them and not overly crowding your space. And again, they're just easy to take in and out as far as cleaning and to do whatever you need to do. And that leads me into our next pro, which is the ease of cleaning. Because they're so lightweight, it's easy to take them outside, hose them out, disinfect them. Just do, again, whatever you need to do to get them clean. Versus a glass tank is going to be a lot harder to take it out, and thoroughly cleaning is going to be a bit more challenging. So the plastic bin is going to be a lot easier. Next thing would be is that they are lightweight and durable, which makes them very easy again to clean, and if you're moving them, you don't have to worry about them breaking as much like a glass terrarium or cracking. So that's just going to make that a lot easier. Next, we're going to go over the cons of plastic bins, so basically the negatives. And the first one would be the overall appearance. They don't look as attractive as a glass terrarium. It doesn't really matter how nice you set them up or how much enrichment you put in. They're just not going to have the overall appealing look to them that glass terrariums do. The second con would be the viewability of the animal. They do make plastic bins that are a bit more clear, but it's still just not as clear as the glass. So if you have an animal that's out a lot, it's just going to be a lot harder to see them, and that may take some of the appeal out of a plastic bin. And the next con is kind of a big one, and that would be that you can't really use lighting that easily. You would have to modify the bin, as in like cutting the top out a little bit and putting screen over it so that you can put a light over that. Then even then, if you're using a heat lamp, you have the risk of it melting the plastic. So using lighting is going to be a bit more difficult. It can be done, but it's going to take some modification to the bin, so it may not be worth it. The next con would be that they are all top opening, which the reason that's a con is because when you reach in to get your reptile out, you look a bit more intimidating and more like a predator when you reach in from above them versus reaching in at their level like you can with a front opening glass terrarium. And then our last con for today would be that they are not ideal for arboreal species. There are deeper bins, but they're still just not quite as tall as some like terrariums or front opening PVC enclosures can be. So if you're housing something like a chameleon, a bin is definitely not going to be ideal because it's so much harder to get one that's like tall enough for them to give them all of that height. So now that we've covered the pros and cons of plastic bins, let's move on to the glass terrariums. And first off, we're going to start with the pros. And starting off with the pros, the first one would be the viewability of your reptile. So if you have a species that's out basking or climbing, hunting, just doing whatever they're doing, it's going to be a lot easier for you to view them. And not only is that just nice for you to be able to see your reptile, but also to be able to observe their behavior and make sure they're acting normal. The second pro would be the overall appearance of a glass terrarium. When they're set up well and well maintained, they can look really awesome, and if you do bioactive, you can have live plants, and they can just add a lot of character to a space and add something that not really many other things can add to a room, and just overall add an amazing look to it. Next pro is you have the option to use lighting or heat mats with them. It doesn't really matter. You can use UVB lighting, basking lights, you can also use heat mats. You don't have to worry about it melting anything, and just the overall ease of taking care of a reptile that has UVB requirements or basking requirements is going to be a lot easier with a glass terrarium. Next would be that you have the option to get a front opening enclosure with the glass terrariums. They do have top opening ones, but it's up to you on what you get. So if you are working with lighting or something, you have the option of doing front openings so that you're not constantly having to move the lighting off the screen. Also, when you reach in to get your reptile, it's going to be a lot less threatening since you're reaching in at their level. And our next pro is that you can stack them if you get a stand that is made for it. However, you can typically only stack them about 3 high unless you make a custom shelf that is made to hold more than that. Another pro is that glass terrariums are typically well ventilated. A lot of times the front opening ones will have ventilation in the bottom along with a screen top, so you're going to constantly have fresh airflow going through there, which will prevent your enclosure from smelling bad and just keep overall fresh air in there, which is going to make for a healthier and happier reptile. That being said, that does kind of lead me into our cons, and because they are so well ventilated, first con is that they typically don't hold humidity well unless you use a humidity shield or keep damp towels laid over the screen. But again, that's going to be an added cost to get the humidity shield or just the hassle of keeping the towels damp so that they retain humidity. Now the second con would be the cost of glass terrariums. Typically a 40-gallon is going to be anywhere from $300 to $350, whereas a similarly sized plastic bin is only going to be about $20. So it's up to you. You guys can go over the pros and cons from this video and decide if it's worth it or not. But just keep in mind, glass terrariums are typically a lot more expensive than the plastic bins. And because they are so much heavier, that again takes us into our next con, and that would be that they are harder to clean because of that. It's much more difficult to thoroughly clean a glass terrarium when you can't just take it outside and hose it out like a plastic bin. You're going to have to do all of your cleaning where it is and disinfecting, so it's going to be a bit more challenging than the plastic bin. Our last con for today is that they are much more breakable. So again, if you're moving them for whatever reason, and because they are so much heavier, you have a much higher chance of breaking them or cracking them. Not to say that you can't crack a plastic bin, but it's more likely to happen with a piece of glass than a piece of plastic. And that being said, that wraps up today's video, so thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.